I'm joined now in the studio by one of Joe Bruno's friends. He's known the former senator for 30 years. Stephen Coffey is a well-known Albany area attorney, and he was in the courtroom today for the sentencing. Thanks very much for coming in.
All 3 hours, Liz.
All 3 hours. It was long.
Oh, yeah, it was long.
So what was it like in there? How did it feel to be in there?
Well, it's dramatic. You don't usually see sentences go on for 3 hours. I've been in sentences for an hour, and that's a long time. So you have 3 hours. The government attorney, Elizabeth Combe, was excellent. She was short, to the point, she was clear. I thought Bill Dreyer, and I've known Bill for years, I've seen him, I thought he was tremendous. Senator Bruno spoke. He went on long, probably a little longer than he should have, but he was passionate. He talked about his life. He talked about who he was, consistent with what Bill Dreyer had done. And then Judge Sharp spoke for, I don't know, 45 minutes, so everything was pretty long and very dramatic because no one knew what Judge Sharp was going to do. And in fact, when he first started speaking, I was sitting next to one of the reporters, and we looked at each other and said, he's going to kill Bruno. I mean, it seemed like he was going to really hammer him. And then he retreated from it, and he said, listen, I'm going to consider all the other factors in the statute. It was a very well laid out statement by the judge.
So when you actually thought that he was going to kill Bruno, it was because they had had some testy exchanges during the trial?
No, because of the remarks of the judge in the beginning. He'd taken a lot of the motions made by Senator Bruno, all the requests to depart from the guidelines because of his age, because of the behavior and so forth, and he just dispensed with them one by one. And he remarked on how he had misused his office and had made it a farce and so forth. So you thought, oh my gosh, and while the government wants 8 years, you didn't think he'd get that. Really, it was a thought he might get 5 or 6 years. And then later he turned, but it was very, very dramatic.
Did you, could you see the senator, his face at all and his response to all of this? Did you have an opportunity to say anything to him or any reaction that you saw from him?
Yeah, I was probably like a lot of supporters. I was in a different room in the beginning because it was an overflow. And then the second part, there was a break when the judge and Senator Bruno had to go to the bathroom. Then I came back, and about the last hour, maybe hour and a quarter, I sat there and I saw Senator Bruno, and I certainly saw Senator Bruno at the time that Judge Sharp was actually looking at him and talking to him and about what he had done wrong. So he was impassive. He knew that he was going to be sentenced to jail or prison. I mean, that became very obvious. And then finally the judge said 8 years is too much, probation is too little. One's too hot, one's too cold. We're going to try and do it in the middle.
You said in an interview in the New York Times this week that you felt that Bruno was actually prepared. If he had to do time, that he was prepared to do that. Do you believe, I mean, prepared how? How does one prepare to go to prison? Or do you mean resigned when you say that?
Well, that's actually a good point. Actually, maybe both. I talked to him last week, and he said, Steve, I know it could be 8 years. And he was fatalistic. And when you go through these kinds of things, your emotions are up and down, and you never can be comfortable. So I think he was resigned to the fact he might go to prison. I think he knew he was probably going to go to prison. I'm certain his attorney, Bill Dreyer, told him, listen, Joe, I don't see you getting probation. We're going to fight for you. But he got 2 years, which really is on the low end of what he could have gotten. I didn't think he wasn't going to get 6 months, and Judge Sharp was not going to give him a year. And the sentence was not unfair. That was not a punitive sentence. I think it took a lot of guts for Judge Sharp to give him a 2-year sentence in the face of all the allegations that have been made and all the claims.
Well, which he may also never serve, right? Because we don't know what the U.S. Supreme Court is going to do.
If the U.S. Supreme Court comes down and says that statute is unconstitutional, those charges will be dismissed, and Joe Bruno will be literally a free man.
So when you talked to him, did you get some idea? Because, you know, he's been he spoke at length today in the courtroom. He then subsequently had this press conference. But he's been a little bit, he was all the time talking. Throughout the trial, and then subsequently when I covered him at the Capitol, you know, you could always get him for a soundbite or for a discussion. Then he sort of had kept a low profile in the advance of the sentencing. What was he doing with himself? Did he give you some idea about that?
Well, I talked to him. He wasn't someone who's going to bars. I know in the article today in the paper said he's going to Jack's now and then, but he's not a bar man. You don't see Joe Bruno out in the town. You've known him personally up on the Hill and covered him for years. I've known him personally as a friend. He was just waiting the sentence. I mean, it literally is like someone waiting to get sick. You know what's going to happen, and what can you do? Is he happy tonight to get 2 years? No. I saw him. I went over to Jack's, which is where he was with his family. They were having dinner, and he asked me to sit down. And I said that, no, I didn't want to. I had to go anyway. And he was stunned in a way, 2 years. but it could have been worse. It could have been far worse.
Was he sitting in that booth in the back?
Yeah, in the back. And it was, when I heard him speak, my heart broke for him. I understand that so many people believe he should have even gotten more, but I'm a friend, and I don't deny it, and I make no apologies for it. And to me, it was excruciating seeing him stand up in court after all he has accomplished and basically beg the judge not to put him in jail.
But you don't feel, I mean, he is definitely unapologetic. Had he been more apologetic, would that have changed things? I mean, there are people who feel very strongly on both sides. He did a lot for the region. He has his champions. He has his serious detractors. Had he been more contrite, would he have done himself some favors, or at that point was it just moot?
No one knows. Judge Sharp took a long time explaining things. I thought he was excellent today, Judge Sharp. He said to him, "You didn't apologize." Well, Joe Bruno said, I don't think I did anything wrong, but if I've caused pain, I'm sorry. But has been his consistent position. I didn't know I did anything wrong. I didn't try and do anything wrong. You can't expect him now. In fact, Judge Sharp said, "I didn't hear you say you were wrong, but I understand where you're coming from. I understand after all this time, you honestly felt that you were not wrong." Well, then Judge Sharp said, "But in fact, you were."
Do you know what he'll do now? I mean, does he have any immediate plans? Because we know he's not, obviously, he went to Jack's, so he's not in prison at the moment, and we're waiting for the U.S. Supreme Court. Does he have any immediate plans?
You know, I think his immediate plan is he sits in his back porch and does this. And I think that's his immediate plan, and just sits and thinks about things. I mean, I really believe that's what he does.
Well, it's a really unusual and
I've never seen anything like it. The advocacy today in the courtroom from every party was superb, and you don't always see that.
Well, Steve, I really appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts on Mr. Bruno.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.